The bells of Orvin Keep had not rung for a binding ceremony in 4 generations, and tonight they would not stop. Sable crouched at the edge of the high gallery, her fingers white against the cold stone balustrade, watching the torchlight wash across a sea of bowed heads below. The pack lords of 9 territories had ridden through snow and salt winds to witness this, and not one of them knew that the woman whose heart was breaking stood above them in a servant's gray dress, hidden behind a curtain of dust. She should have stayed in the scullery where she belonged. But the bells had begun at dusk, and something inside her had refused to let her look away. He stood at the far end of the nave, and even from this distance, she knew the line of his shoulders better than she knew her own hands. Ronan Cale, the Alpha King of the Northern Pact, dressed in the pale wolf pelts and dark steel of his house. His black hair had been cut shorter since the night she had last seen him, and the lean gauntness of his jaw told her he had not been sleeping. But the stillness of him, that terrible, waiting stillness, had not changed. It was the stillness he had carried into the room where she had found him 5 months ago, half dead on her grandmother's floor. Sable pressed her palm flat against her sternum, where a mark no one else had ever seen pulsed beneath the cloth. A silver spiral, fine as a breath that had appeared on her skin the morning after she had poured the last of her grandmother's forbidden gift into a stranger's wound. She had thought it would fade when he left. It had not. It had grown warmer every day he had been gone. Below her, the high cantor raised his staff of carved yew, and the bells fell silent in a single stroke. Ronan Cale, last blood of the Morrowfang line, Alpha of the Northern Pact, the cantor intoned. Speak now the name that shall be woven into the treaty ring. Sable's breath left her in a soundless whisper. Everyone in the keep had known for 3 days. The daughter of House Stravani had arrived at the east gate in a carriage pulled by 4 white mares. She had told herself she did not care. She had told herself she was a nobody. A shamed Omega cast out of the hollow brook pack at 14 for being unable to shift, unable to answer the moon, unable to be anything but the defective thing her uncle had called her the morning he had dragged her to the border and left her in the road. A side door opened below. A woman in white stepped into the torchlight. Isolde Dravagna did not walk. She drifted. When she reached the foot of the dais, she did not bow. She lifted her chin instead, the way a woman lifts her chin when she already knows the answer to the question about to be asked. Sable's eyes went back to Ronan. Something was wrong. She noticed it the way a healer notices a fever before the patient knows. His hands hung too still at his sides. His jaw was set in a way that did not look like decision. It looked like clenching. And his eyes, the pale, bruised gold of a winter hawk's eyes, had a glaze on them that she had seen before in men who had been given too much poppy for pain. He was not choosing. He was enduring. The silver spiral on her chest went suddenly, savagely hot. "Speak the name," the cantor said. Ronan opened his mouth. For one impossible heartbeat, Sable thought he might turn. She thought she saw his nostrils flare, just once, as if something had brushed the edge of his awareness and slipped away. "Isolde of House Dravagna," he said. His voice was flat, not cold, flat. Like a voice read aloud from a page by a man who had never seen the words before. The basilica erupted. Men struck the flagstones with the butts of their spears. Women threw pale blue petals into the air. Isolde Dravagna smiled the smile of a woman who had won a very long game, and she raised her hand so that Ronan could take it. He took it. Sable felt the spiral on her chest split open. It was not pain. It was loss. The curtain she had hidden behind swayed. Far below, a single head in the front row turned toward the gallery. A man with a scar through his lip, and a silver wolf pinned at his throat. His eyes found the swaying curtain, and for one terrible second, they found her. Then the roar swelled, and he turned back, and the moment was gone. Sable ran. She ran down the servants' stair and out into the stone courtyard where the last of winter's snow had gone to gray slush. She ran until her legs folded, and then she knelt behind a wood stack, pressed her forehead to the cold birch bark, and let herself understand. He had not remembered her. He had walked out of her life on legs she had knit back together, and he had walked into this basilica tonight and spoken another woman's name without so much as a flicker. She pressed her hand harder against her chest. The spiral was no longer a spiral. It was a wound, a hairline crack in her breastbone, warm and slow bleeding. And she, who had been cast out for being defective, who had been told her whole life that she was a wolf with no wolf in her, felt for the first time a thing stir beneath her ribs that was not her heart, a thing that was listening, a thing that had lifted its head, a thing that had, faintly and unmistakably, begun to growl. Sable stopped breathing. From the direction of the keep came the slow, deliberate sound of a boot on gravel. A man who was not in any rush because he already knew where his quarry had gone. The man with the scar through his lip was walking toward the woodstack. She did not look up. If she looked up, her face would tell him everything her grandmother had spent 11 years teaching her never to tell anyone. "Girl?" the scarred man said. His voice was not cruel. That was the worst of it. A cruel voice she could have braced against. This voice was patient, and patient voices belonged to men who did not need to shout because they knew they would get what they wanted in the end. "Girl, look at me." She looked up. He was older than she had thought from the gallery, silver threaded through the dark at his temples. His eyes were the color of river ice in the thaw. "What is your name?" "Marin," she said. Marin of Hollow Brook. It had been her mother's name, and she had borrowed it the day she came to Orvin Keep looking for work. "You were in the high gallery tonight." "I was in the kitchens." "The kitchens are on the south side. The stair you came down is on the north. You have ash on your hem, Marin of Hollow Brook, but the ash is from the gallery braziers, which burn pitch pine. The kitchen hearths burn oak." She said nothing. He crouched slowly. "I am not going to hurt you. I am asking you a question. When the king spoke the name Isolde, did something happen to you? Here." He tapped his own chest over the sternum. A heat. A tearing. A sound in your ears like a bell being struck underwater. Her heart stopped. "No," she whispered. He reached into the breast of his coat and drew out a folded square of vellum, a drawing in charcoal, rough but confident, of a woman's sternum with a fine silver spiral traced above the heart. The same spiral that was, at this very moment, burning beneath her dress. "The king has been waking every night for the last 4 months with this shape drawn in frost across his window. He does not remember the woman who saved him. He does not remember his own road between here and the hunting lodge, where his guard found him half alive on a cottage floor. There are 4 days of his life he cannot account for, and those 4 days are the reason I am kneeling in slush speaking to a kitchen girl." He refolded the vellum. "If you have this mark, Marin of Hollowbrook, you must come with me, tonight, before the Dravani see you. They are looking too, and when they find the woman who wears this mark, they will not ask her name." "And who are you?" "My name is Asher Vale. I am the shield of the Morrowfang line. I have served Ronan Kale's father and Ronan Kale himself for 31 years, and I am telling you that something unnatural has been done to my king." Sable looked at him the way her grandmother had taught her to look at strangers, the long look that was not about the face, but about the shadow behind the face. Asher Vale did not flinch. His shadow was the color of old iron, and it was steady. But steady men had watched her uncle drag her to the border road once, too. "I do not have a mark." She stood up. She curtsied, badly, the way scullery girls curtsy. "If my lord will forgive me, I must return to my work." She turned to walk past him. He did not stop her. She was 3 steps past the woodstack when he said, without raising his voice, "He called your name in his sleep 4 nights ago. Not Marin." The other one. She kept walking. In the cupboard beneath the bell rope where she slept on a straw pallet, she pulled her satchel out. Into it, she put her grandmother's small knife, the tin of salve, the packet of dried thorn root, the linen strip with her grandmother's final hair woven into it, and, last, the scrap of black wool she had cut from the hem of the dying stranger's cloak 5 months ago. She slipped down through the brew house, across the stable yard, out through the postern where the night watch had been bribed with a morning season flask of Dravani wine, which told her more about the Dravani than anything Ashervale had said. At the edge of the birchwood, she turned back, just once. The basilica windows were still gold. The bells had started again, slower now. The bells of the sealed binding. Sable pressed the scrap of black wool to her mouth. "I forgive you," she whispered, "because I do not think you did this, and because forgiving you is the only thing left that is mine." She turned her back on the keep and walked into the trees. She did not see the shutter that eased open in the north tower, or the pale gold eyes that tracked her small figure through the birches until the dark took her. She did not hear the sound the man at the window made when she vanished from his sight, a sound closer to the noise an animal makes when it wakes in a trap. Ronan Kale was still holding Isolde Dravagna's hand when the sound tore out of him. Every wolf in the basilica heard it. Every wolf in the basilica froze. And in the birchwood, a mile gone and still walking, Sable pressed her palm to the silver spiral on her chest and felt it answer. The village of Little Hemet did not appear on the maps the Morofang couriers used. It sat in a fold of the Greywater Hills where two poor roads met, and neither one mattered. Sable arrived on the first thaw of spring, 4 months after she had walked out of Orvin Keep, and she told the miller's widow that her name was Wenna and that her husband had died of lung fever in a town she did not want to speak of. The miller's widow had buried 2 husbands of her own and did not ask her to speak of it. She gave Sable the back room of the mill cottage, a straw tick, and a door that closed. Sable paid for the room by setting the baker's broken collarbone on her 3rd morning, and after that, she did not have to pay again. By the 4th week, she was Wenna of the mill. Women brought her their coughing babies and their milk-fevered ewes. She brewed thorn root for sleep. She stitched with boar bristle. She pressed her hands very carefully to the places where the pain was worst, and when the pain went away more quickly than expected, she pretended she had not noticed. She was careful. So careful that most nights she did not let herself think about the fact that the silver spiral on her chest had begun to put out roots. A fine silver line had crept out of the spiral toward her collarbone, and another down toward her ribs, and on the worst nights, when the wind came from the north, she felt them warm in sequence, as if something was walking its fingers along them to see if she was still there. On the morning of the last frost, the miller's widow came to the door with a rider from Copperbottom. Under his arm he had a rolled bundle of broadsheets, and the top sheet was folded outward. Sable saw the woodcut before she saw the words. A woman's figure, rough, no face, and above her heart a fine spiral shape. Below it, in heavy market letters, 3 words, 1,000 crowns. "I will see to the horse," Sable said. She knelt in the spring mud by the horse's torn foreleg and did her work, cleanly, hand steady, because panic and skill do not share a body. While she worked, she listened. "Bad season up north," the rider was saying. "The Alpha King has gone strange, will not leave his keep, will not see his bride, tore the north wing apart with his own hands last month. He has criers at every market now, looking for a woman with a mark on her chest. A little silver twist thing, says she is not to be harmed." Sable's hands did not stop moving. "Bounty is a fortune, but the Dravani have put up their own. Same woman, same mark. Only their notice says, bring her to them first, and if she resists, it does not say she has to be alive." The widow made a sign against the evil eye. "Who would do such a thing? Folk who are afraid of her?" Sable stood up. Your horse will heal. Keep him off the leg for 3 days. She took her pay, walked back to the mill cottage and began, very quietly, to pack. She did not reach the second buckle of her satchel before the dog began to bark. The miller's widow's black dog barked at strangers and at storm weather and at nothing else. It was barking now, full-throated at the edge of the pine brake. Sable went to the back window. At the edge of the pines, something stood watching the house. It was not a wolf. It was bigger than a wolf. And it stood with the wrong kind of stillness, the stillness of something wearing a body it had not been born into. Its eyes caught the light. They were the color of lamp oil with the flame just lit. A second one stepped out of the pines beside it. A third. Sable stepped back. Her hand went to her sternum. The silver spiral was hot. And for the first time in 4 months, the thing beneath her ribs that had lifted its head in the courtyard of Orvin Keep did not growl. It sat up. It stood up. It said, without words, the first thing it had ever said to her in the 23 years they had shared a body. Run. Or let me out. From the front of the cottage, beyond the barking dog, came the sound she had been dreading and half-dreaming of for 4 long months. A horn, a northern packed horn. 3 short notes and a long one, riding down on the thaw wind from the ridge above Little Hemet. The dog stopped barking all at once, as if a hand had closed around its throat. And on the pine line, the 3 things that were not wolves began, in perfect silence, to walk toward the mill cottage. The northern packed horn did not belong to the Drevenai. The Drevenai rode with bells on their harness. What she had heard on the ridge wind was the old bone horn of the Morofang outriders, which meant the 3 things in the pines had arrived first. Someone had sent them on ahead to finish the work before the king's riders could reach her. She had perhaps 100 heartbeats. Maybe less. She pulled the satchel over her shoulder, drew her grandmother's knife from its sleeve pocket, and went to the front room. The miller's widow was standing in the open front doorway. Riders! 3, coming fast. Wenna, did you hear that horn? Close the door. It is not the king's men I am afraid of. Something in her face must have finally reached the widow. She stepped back, swung the heavy oak door shut, and dropped the bar. Sable went past her to the shutters and closed them one by one, and the cottage went from morning into dusk in the space of 6 breaths. In the new dim, the silver lines under her dress were visible through the linen, warm enough that the weave had begun to show the shape of them against her skin, like a leaf seen through wet paper. The widow saw. The widow had buried 2 husbands. The widow did not scream. You are her, the one in the broadsheet. Yes. Some of those riders are here to save me. Some are here to kill me. I do not know which will reach the door first. The widow walked to the hearth, knelt and lifted a flat stone from the floor. Under the stone was a tin box. In the box was a short curved knife and a pouch of coins wrapped in wool. My second husband was a smuggler. You will go out the loft window and down the mill wheel side and follow the race through the hazels until it meets the river. Do not go to the road. There is a boatman at the river bend who will not ask your name if you show him the second of those coins. Go, now. From the pines, very close now, there came a sound that was almost a voice and almost a cough. Sable went. She took the loft stair 3 at a time, wedged the little window open, threw her satchel down into the soft, wet hay bank below, and lowered herself by her arms until she could drop. She landed badly. Pain shot through her left ankle, sharp and mean. She ran along the mill wall, bent double. Behind her, the cottage door splintered, the whole lower half of it, as if something the size of a plow horse had walked through it without slowing. She heard the widow's voice, raised, steady. She heard a second voice, low and wet and wrong, answer. Then she heard nothing at all from the cottage. She did not look back. Her grandmother had told her once that the greatest cruelty a dying person could be spared was the cruelty of being mourned while they were still trying to die. The widow had made her choice. Sable would honor it by surviving. She ran along the race. Her ankle screamed. She could hear, somewhere at the edge of hearing, a second thing running parallel to her on the bank opposite, matching her pace. Hurting her. The hazels opened into a clearing, and in the clearing stood a man. A tall, narrow figure in a gray traveling cloak. He turned. It was Asher Vale. The scar through his lip. The pin at his throat. The river ice eyes. 4 months and 100 miles from the woodstack behind the basilica. Walk to me, Marin of Hollowbrook. Do not look at what is on the ground. She looked at what was on the ground. It was one of the wrong things. Up close, with its eyes gone to the matte brown of death, she could see that whatever it had been when it was whole, it had been changed. Its jaw was too long. Its teeth were set in 2 rows instead of 1. Along its spine, it was corded with fine black cabling. Not a wolf. Not even a shifter gone wrong. Something made. I killed this one. 2 more are on your widow's side of the race. How did you... I have been following you for 11 weeks. I was in Copper Bottom when the broadsheet went up. The broadsheet is Dravani work. My king does not know your face yet, girl. He does not know your name. He only knows he is losing his mind. I came ahead of his riders because if his riders found you first, the Dravani spies in his own household would know in a day. She walked to him. There is one thing you need to understand. I did not lie in the courtyard. The king called a name in his sleep 4 nights before the binding. I said it was the name you had before Marin. He has been calling it every night since. The thing killing him is that no one at court has ever heard it. Not his guards, not his sister. No one but me. Because I was the one who pulled him off that cottage floor in the hunting country the winter before last, and the first thing he did when he woke was speak that name into my ear like a prayer. Sable's hand had gone, without her deciding, to the spiral on her chest. Say it, she whispered. Asher Vale looked at her with the flat, tired mercy of a man who had carried a thing too long. Sable. He calls for Sable. The silver lines on her chest went white-hot, bright enough to shine through the linen for the space of 1 heartbeat, and somewhere, a great distance to the north, a man she had not seen in 5 months fell to his knees in a tower and began, finally, to remember. Asher Vale did not ask her to confirm the name. He took her elbow and turned her toward the far edge of the clearing where a small gray mare was tied to a hazel. We ride. I will tell you the rest while we ride. 2 of those things are still alive behind us. Can you sit a horse with a bad ankle? She had not told him about the ankle. Yes. They went north through the hazels and then east along a deer track. When they were deep enough into the wood, Asher Vale began to talk. He talked the way a man talks when he has been waiting a very long time to put something down. The winter before last, the king rode out with 8 of us to survey the trap lines at the edge of the Greywater country. On the 3rd night, at a hunting lodge we have used for 2 generations, the wine was wrong. My king drank first, because he always drinks first. An hour later he could not stand. An hour after that, 3 of our own guards had drawn steel on the rest of us, and we understood, very late, that the betrayal had come from inside. We fought. We lost 4 men. I put the king on a horse with a cut in his side that had gone through 2 ribs into the lung, and I slapped the horse on the rump and told it to take him anywhere but back to the lodge. The horse took him to you. On the 4th day, he walked out of the trees on his own legs. Alive. Scarred here. Asher Vale tapped his own side, with a scar that was 6 weeks old, not 4 days. The wound was too old. Impossibly old. No healer on the register of the 9 packs can do that. He did not remember where he had been. He remembered a voice, a hand on his chest. He could not remember the name. He rode back to Orvin Keep. He buried the traitors quietly. He ordered the binding ceremony postponed twice, giving no reason. And then the Dravani girl arrived at the gate with a letter from her father quoting treaty obligations older than my king's grandfather, and the court forced his hand. Forced him how? There is a kind of drug, girl. Old work. Swamp work. It does not kill the wolf inside a man. It puts the wolf to sleep. And while the wolf is asleep, the man on top of it will say whatever is put into his mouth. It was in the cup the high cantor handed him at the basilica. I watched him drink it. I could not stop him, because if I had struck that cup from his hand in front of 9 pack lords, I would have been hanged before the bells rang twice, and my king would have been bound to her anyway the next morning. So I let him drink. And then I came to find you, because the only thing on this earth that can undo that binding before it is consummated is the woman who saved his life, and the mark she carries, standing before his council and speaking her true name in his hearing. Sable could not speak. He has not touched her. The wolf is only sleeping, and even sleeping, it knows the woman beside him is not its mate. He has locked himself in the North Tower for 3 of the past 4 months. The Dravani will not let him last long enough to remember. They want an heir out of him before the year turns, and if they cannot get it from Isolde's body, they will get it from a false claim and a quiet poisoning and a regency. Your death is the last obstacle to that plan. I never meant to claim him. I know. The mark was his wolf finding a place to anchor, when his body could no longer keep itself together. His wolf chose you. That is not a claim any court can annul. Which is why the Dravani want you in the ground. I am not a mate. I cannot shift. I was cast out of my pack at 14. The Dravani know exactly what you are, and that should frighten you more than anything I have told you. The mare carried them out of the wood and into a high meadow, and far ahead, on the shoulder of a hill crowned with 3 leaning pines, Sable saw a small stone watchtower with a single thin line of smoke rising from its roof. Safe house. Mine, not his. 2 of my men are inside. At moonrise we ride for the keep. You will be in his hearing by dawn. She did not tell Asher Vale what she felt. She did not tell him that along with the warmth of the spiral, she had begun to feel, very faintly, a third thing. A heartbeat that was not hers. Deeper. Lower. A heartbeat that had started the night she had dropped from the mill loft window and had not stopped since. She had been careful for 4 months, but she had not been careful in the cottage 5 months ago. The body kept its own counts. There would be time at the safe house, and she would tell him then. She did not get the time. They were 100 paces from the watchtower door when the door opened, and a man staggered out of it clutching his belly and fell face down in the wet grass without taking another step. Asher Vale was off the mare before the dying man hit the ground. He hit it knee first, one hand at the man's throat to find the pulse he would not find, the other already drawing the short blade at his hip. Off the horse, behind the stone trough, now. She crouched behind the trough at the foot of the watchtower wall and made her breath go slow. The dying man was Asher Vale's own. She knew by the way his hand rested on the man's hair for 1/2 second before he rose. Soldiers do not grieve while there is still fighting to do. But they touch. Once. Asher Vale went through the open watchtower door like a man who had taken doors before. She heard a grunt, then a wet sound she did not want to name. Then silence. Clear, he called. He did not sound clear. Inside, a second man lay in an enormous spreading dark, and on the wall above the cold hearth, someone had drawn a mark in blood. 3 interlocked curves like a serpent biting its own flanks. She had seen it before at the throat of the scarred man in the basilica courtyard. Dravani work. The twist of the inner curve is different. This is a house fork from the main line. They have a private guard the old lord keeps out of the records. We cannot stay. Asher. It was the first time she had used his given name. There is something I have not told you. It will change what we do. Tell me. She put her hand on her belly, low, below the spiral. She did not say the word. She did not have to. His face did the thing faces do when a man has just understood that a thing he had thought was a plan has become a thing that will have to be fought for. How far? I do not know. My cycles have been nothing for years, but I have felt it for 2 weeks, and today on the mare I felt the second. The second. 2 heartbeats, Asher, besides mine. 2. He closed his eyes for one full breath. When he opened them, he was already moving. Change of plan. We do not ride to the keep tonight. You are not riding 2 more days on a bad ankle carrying 2 children my king does not know he fathered. We ride to the old abbey at Morn's Wold. 4 hours. The walls are old wolf stone. I send a bird to my king. He comes to us. He cannot leave the keep. He can if I put the right words in the bird. When he reads your name on a strip of bird paper in his own hand, nothing in the walls of Orvin Keep will hold him. She climbed into the dead guard's saddle. If we do not get there, do not stop for me. You ride on. You tell him. Girl, you are carrying his line. I will die in this field before I ride past you. They went. The Greywater country rolled away in long, low waves of new grass and leaning pine, and Sable rode with one hand on the reins and one hand pressed flat to her belly, as if she could hold the 2 small heartbeats steady with her palm. The sun was low behind them when Asher Vale's mare's ears went forward, and then flat. On the ridge line ahead, against the gold of the sunset, 6 shapes had come up the slope at a silent run and had stopped. Their shoulders were too high. On the flanks of 2 of them, Sable could see the fine black cabling. Asher Vale did not slow. He drove his heels in harder and aimed for the narrow throat of a gully cut into the hillside. Hold on, ride. The gully took them in a rush of shadow and loose shale, and the shapes on the ridge dropped off the skyline in pursuit. She could hear them, a soft thudding rhythm that was not the rhythm of a wolf's run. It was the rhythm of something built to run longer than a wolf and not to tire. The gully opened into a stream bed, and as they came around the turn, Asher Vale swore once in a language she did not know. 2 of the things were already in the stream bed ahead. They had circled. He pulled up so hard the mare reared. He came out of the saddle before her forelegs touched down, and his blade was in his hand. Ride past me, up the bank, take the trace on the right. Do not stop for anything, not for me. Asher. Ride. Behind them, the other 4 came around the turn. She understood what he had chosen. She hated it, and she loved him for it. She turned the horse, drove her heels into its sides, and did not look back. She took the right bank at a scrambling lurch, her bad ankle screaming. She found the trace. She put her horse up it. Behind her, in the stream bed, Asher Vale shouted once, a wordless defiance that was almost a laugh, and then she heard the unmistakable ring of steel on something that was not steel. Then she heard the thing that had been in her dreams for 4 months. A howl. Not near. Far to the north, many leagues. And yet she heard it inside her chest and inside the cage of her ribs and inside the small hot place where 2 heartbeats were now beating in perfect terrified time with hers. It was a howl made by a throat that had forgotten how to be a man's throat. And it was coming toward her. And it was carrying, under its rage, a name. Her name. Sable. The sky darkened. A great shadow moved across the last of the sunset. Something enormous running flat out along the ridge line toward her, and around it, like a cloak, ran a pack. She reined the horse in so hard it skidded. In the stream bed below, the 4 things closing on Asher Vale's back lifted their malformed heads all at once, as if a single hand had pulled a single string, turned away from him, and began to run. They ran away from her because the thing coming down the ridge was worse than they were, and they knew it. For the first time in her life, Sable felt the thing inside her ribs stand to its full height and answer the howl from the north with a sound of its own, a sound that came out of her mouth, and was not a scream, and was not a word, and was not human. It was a call. And very far away and very close at the same time, the thing coming down the ridge heard it, changed course, and came for her. He came out of the dusk the way a storm comes out of a clear afternoon, with no warning and no mercy. Sable saw him first as a shape against the ridge, too big, and then as a shadow crossing the stream in one long bound, and then as a silence that had opened in front of her horse where, one breath before, there had been only air. The horse screamed. It reared, twisted, went down on its hocks. Sable came out of the saddle and skidded 3 body lengths down through the grass before a root caught her hip and stopped her. She could not get up. Her ankle had given. Between her and the horse there now stood the largest wolf she had ever seen in her life. Its fur was the color of old iron, and the last of the sunset found the tips of it and turned them to brief red wire. Its shoulder was as tall as the dead guard's saddle had been. Its flanks heaved once, twice, the heaving of an animal that has run a great distance at a speed no animal should run. Its eyes were the pale bruised gold of a winter hawk's eyes. They were his eyes. Sable made a sound in her throat that was not a word. She put her hand out. Her palm was scraped open from the fall, and the wolf looked at her palm and then at her face, and then at the place on her chest where, through the torn cloth of her dress, the silver spiral and its 2 new roots were glowing faintly like a fire banked under ash. The wolf took 1 step forward, another. It lowered itself slowly as if the motion hurt, the huge iron-dark body folding down into the grass until its chest was flat against the slope and its great head level with hers. It did not touch her. It waited. "Ronan," she whispered. The wolf closed its eyes. The shift was not the tearing horror thing she had been told about all her life in the Hollow Brook pack. It was a breath. A long, terrible, shaking breath. And at the end of it, he was on his knees in the grass in front of her, barefoot, in a rough traveling cloak he had thrown on in the North Tower and not adjusted since. His face was hollowed and sharpened and wrong with grief, the way a house is wrong when the fire has been out for weeks. He was shaking. "I did not know," he said. His voice was hoarse from the howl. "I did not know it was you. I would have, I swear on my mother, I would have crawled out of that basilica on my hands to you if I had known. They put something in my... Sable. I am so..." He stopped. He could not get the rest out. She had rehearsed 1,000 versions of this in the dark for 4 months. She had been cold in every one. She had practiced the exact curve of her mouth for it. None of it came. What came out of her was a raw, wet sound, the sound a healer makes when she finally gets to set down the body she has been carrying, and she lifted her bleeding hand and pressed it to the hollow under his jaw, where the pulse jumped wild against her fingers. "You are so thin," she said, which was the stupidest thing she had ever said, and the first honest thing. "Ronan, you are so thin." He caught her hand and he pressed it to his mouth, not in a kiss, in something rougher. The desperate pressing of a starving man against a piece of bread he is not yet certain is real. "I am here," she heard herself say, as if she were the one who had been lost. "I am here, Ronan. I am here." The thing inside her ribs, which had answered his howl, went quiet and warm and folded itself down again, satisfied, like a dog that has been away too long from the hearth and has finally come home. Somewhere at the edge of the meadow, a pack of the king's outriders had come up over the ridge and seen their king on his knees in the wet grass in front of a small, ragged woman with blood on her palm. And the pack had, to a wolf, sunk silently down onto their bellies at the edge of the slope in a ring. When Ronan spoke, it was to the skin of her wrist. "I remember now." His other hand came to rest against the front of her dress where the silver spiral glowed. He did not press. He only rested it there, a palm as warm as a hearthstone, and under his palm the spiral quieted, and the broken place under her sternum began, very slowly, to close. Lower, below his palm, two small heartbeats went on beating. He had not felt them yet. A horn sounded from the north, not the Morofang bone horn, higher, sharper, a Dravani horn, and it was not asking for parley. Ronan's head came up. The Alpha King was back inside his face at once, and it was a terrible face to look at. "How many?" he said to the ridge. One of the wolves on the rim shifted smoothly into the shape of a man. "Two banners, my king, Dravani colors, coming down the copper-bottom road at the trot." Ronan looked down at Sable. "I am not losing you again. Not tonight. Not for a Dravani banner. Not for any council. Not for the rest of my life." She nodded, because her voice had left her, and because the news she had for him would have to wait one more hour. They did not ride back toward the road. Ronan would not allow it. The Dravani banner on the copper-bottom road meant they had known Asher Vale had found her. The keep was no longer safe tonight, so Ronan carried her. He lifted her out of the wet grass as if she weighed no more than a folded cloak, and when she said her ankle was fine, he looked down at her with an expression that silenced her. He set her in the saddle himself and wrapped his own cloak around her. It smelled of smoke and the North Tower and, underneath, the salve her grandmother had used to close deep wounds. "Where are we going?" "To a place where no one will reach us before I have said what I have to say to you." He mounted behind her, held her with the barely touching carefulness of a man who had just been given back something and had not yet let himself believe he was allowed to hold it. They rode an hour and came at last to a shepherd's stone croft set against a high bank of birch. It was empty. Dry wood stacked beside the hearth, a pot of hard cheese in the larder, all put there by hands that had known who might come. Asher Vale took 3 outriders and ringed the croft at 100 paces. "I will be outside, my king, for as long as you need me to be." Inside, the lamp was lit. Sable sat at the small rough table. Ronan knelt on the floor by her chair. "Tell me what I did." "You did not do anything. You were drugged." "I did a thing. Drugged or not, my mouth said a name that was not yours. I stood in front of 9 pack lords and took the hand of a Dravani woman and could not even find the sense to look up at the gallery. You were there. Sable. You were there, and I did not look up. You did not know I was there. I should have known." His voice cracked. "The wolf in me knew. He has been trying to break the door down ever since." He put his forehead down on her knee. "I am sorry. For the basilica. For the 5 months. For every morning you have waked up thinking I had thrown you away. For every night I have waked up in a tower calling a name I could not find. I have been a king my entire adult life, and I have never been sorry for anything the way I am sorry now. Only please, do not tell me you believed I had thrown you away on purpose." She looked down at the top of his bent head. She had rehearsed coldness. None of it reached her now. She was, she realized, tired. So tired of being a woman who had been thrown away. She did not want to be that woman 1 hour longer. She put her hand on the back of his head. "I believed it in the dark. In the daylight I believed something else. I could feel the spiral. It did not fade. No rejected woman's mark keeps growing. The truth is, I never fully believed the basilica. My body would not let me. I was angry. I am still a little angry, but I did not stop." She could not finish. He lifted his head. His eyes were wet. "Say it," he said quietly. "Please. Because I have wanted to hear you say it for 5 months, and I did not even know your face." She said it. "I love you. I do not know when it started. I think it started while you were dying on my floor. I loved you when I thought you had chosen another woman. I will love you tomorrow, when whatever comes down the copper-bottom road comes. I will love you if we do not win. I will love you if we do." He closed his eyes. "I love you. I loved you from the first breath I took after your hand touched my chest. I did not know your name, and I loved you. I have loved you so badly for 5 months that I have nearly killed my own body with it. And if you will have me, I will spend the rest of my life learning to love you in a way that does not require me to be half dead to do it." She laughed. It was a wet, broken laugh, but it was a laugh, and his mouth bent upward too. The smile of a king who had forgotten. Smiling was something his mouth could do. "There is a thing I have to tell you." "I will hear anything." She took his hand. She put it on her belly, low, over the place where a second clock had become 2 clocks. She watched the moment the blood went out of his face. She watched the moment it came back, so fiercely his cheeks went red. "Sable, too. My grandmother used to say that when your hand could not decide which side was the baby, it was because there was a baby on each side. I have felt 2 heartbeats for 3 days. Mine makes 3. He slid off the chair. He sank until he was kneeling on both knees in front of her, and his forehead was pressed to her belly through the wool, and he wrapped his arms all the way around her hips and held her as if she might be taken away from him by weather. "Mine. Ours. Both. Sable. I am." He could not finish. She stroked his hair, and she let him not finish, and for the length of 5 heartbeats, nothing in the world needed her to be anything but held. Then, from the north, a second horn. Closer. Ronan lifted his head. They are not waiting for dawn. He went to the door. Asher Vale was already walking back with a new tightness in his jaw. "My king, not 2 banners, 6, and not Dravanya Guard. The old lord's private work. The fork of the serpent sigil. They have brought their hounds, and a wagon of wolfsbane iron. They are not here to take her. They are here to take the keep." Ronan went very still. "They cannot take the keep," Sable said. "You are the keep." "I have been in a tower for 3 months, love." The word came out of him naturally. "There are men inside my own walls who have had time to count their Dravani silver." Asher Vale cleared his throat. "The council will not open the north gate to them unless someone inside gives the order. The only person who can give that order, besides you, is your bride, Isolde Dravanie, who has, for the last 3 days, been signing her name on household writs as regent." The silence in the croft was a very large silence. "Then we ride now." Sable stood up. Her ankle did not quite fail. She lifted her chin. "We ride now. All of us." Orvin Keep was burning along its eastern wall when they came over the last ridge. Not fully. Not the way a keep burns when it has fallen. It was the precise, careful burning of a keep whose inside was betraying it one gate at a time. The East Barbican was a column of black smoke. The outer Bailey torches had all been doused at once. Above the north tower, where a pale gold Morofang banner should have hung, the dusk wind was turning a second banner, dove gray, serpent-forked in silver. Ronan saw the banner and said nothing. The whole ring of outriders around them made a low sound in their throats that was not a growl and was not a word, but was the sound a pack makes when it understands that its den has been entered. "They will not have the Great Hall yet," Asher Vale said. "The old lord is careful. He will have secured the outer gates first, and the armory. The hall is last. There will be fighting inside the walls for another hour, maybe 2. After that, if we are not in, we will not be in." "We will be in," Ronan said. "The hostages," Sable said. Both men looked down at her. "There have to be. Anyone who would not swear to the Dravani regent tonight. The women in the kitchens, the maids, the old men at the stables. The old lord is not going to kill them yet because he is going to want to make you watch. That is how you break an alpha. You make him choose." "She is right," Asher Vale said. "You will stay with the second banner at the postern. I will take the first banner in through the river gate. I will not have you near that hall." "No." Sable. "No, Ronan. If you walk into that hall without me, the old lord will hold his hostages over your head, and you will choose them, because you are a king, and that is what kings do. If you walk into that hall with me, he cannot use the hostages. The thing he actually wants is me dead, before the spiral on my chest turns into something the 9 packs will have to kneel to. I am the only piece on the board he has to take tonight, which means I am the only piece that can walk up to him and make him show his hand. Ronan's jaw set. He will kill you. He will try. He will not do it the moment I walk in, because the moment I walk in, he will want to talk. Old lords like him cannot help themselves. While he talks, your people take back the walls. I am not going to argue with her, my king, Ashervale said. She is right, and she is yours, and you will not win this one. Ronan closed his eyes. When he opened them, he bent and pressed his forehead to hers. If you fall, I will not stop. I will go through him and every one of his, and then I will come back for you, and I will carry you home. Do you understand? Yes. He kissed her. Once. Not long. The kiss a soldier gives his wife at a gate. And then he lifted his voice to his pack. We do not ride to kill tonight. We ride to retake. Every man who drops his weapon, you let him drop it. Every man who raises one, you put down. No one touches the women in the hall. The old lord is mine. His daughter, if she raises a blade, is mine. Go. They went. Orvin Keep's river gate was older than the keep itself, a grill of black iron set into the base of the curtain wall where the Orvin River ran under the foundations. It was meant to be unreachable by anyone who was not a fish. It was not unreachable by a pack of wolves led by a man who had, as a boy of 9, slipped out through it to meet a kitchen girl. They were inside the outer bailey before the men on the walls had noticed. The fighting was ugly and short. Ronan's outriders took the old lord's private work the way a wolf pack takes deer in a narrow place, from behind, in silence. By the time Ronan and Sable came up the back stair of the guest wing, there was more Morofang steel in the bailey than Dravani silver, and somewhere below a woman was shouting orders in the voice of a kitchen mistress rallying her girls. The doors of the great hall were shut. Asher Vale held up a fist. The column stopped. Inside, Old Lord and Isolde, and 2 ranks of the Serpent Fork. Perhaps 30. Hostages against the far wall. Your steward, my king. Your sister, the High Cantor. Sable felt Ronan go still. His sister, she is alive? She is alive, my king. The old lord has kept her standing where you will see her first when you open those doors. He knows what he is doing. Ronan looked down at Sable. I walk in first. Sable. I walk in first. You come in at my shoulder. Not in front of me. He has to see me first. He has to be the one who speaks first. If you speak first, he wins the room. Ronan nodded. Once. Hard. Open the doors. 2 outriders put their shoulders to the great hall doors and swung them inward. The hall opened before them, full of torches, full of smoke, full of the fine dove-gray livery of a house that had been pretending, for a generation, not to be planning this night. And at the far end of it, on the dais that had held Ronan Cale 5 months ago when he had spoken the wrong name, stood a thin, silver-haired man in a high-collared coat, with a long, thin blade already drawn and resting across his forearm. Beside him, in the white gown she had worn at the Basilica, stood Isolde Dravanier, and along the far wall, hands tied, stood the hostages, the steward, the High Cantor, the 4 kitchen girls, and at the front of them, a young woman with Ronan's same pale, bruised gold eyes, his sister, Lenya. Sable stepped through the doors, her ankle held, her chin held, the silver spiral on her chest and the 2 new roots under Ronan's cloak pulsed once, warm, steady. The old lord looked at her. His pale eyes traveled from her face to the place on her chest where the cloak parted over the shine of the spiral. She watched him smile. She watched him begin to speak. "Ah," said the old lord. "The mill girl." "No," Sable said. "The mother of the heirs." The hall, very suddenly, was silent. The old lord's name was Halric Dravanye, and he had been waiting his whole life to be looked at the way Sable was looking at him now. Men who have planned a thing for 30 years cannot let the night pass without their speech. "The mother of the heirs," Halric repeated, tasting the words. "How clever. A mill girl with a trinket on her chest and a belly full of claims. You understand, of course, that no council in the north will take your word over the witnessed binding my daughter now carries on her finger. I have not asked a council to take my word. I have come to let you finish the sentence you have been rehearsing since you put the poison in the binding cup. Go ahead. Say it." His pale eyes sharpened. He had expected pleading or defiance, not permission. Permission unbalanced him, and Sable, who had watched her grandmother undo men like him across a kitchen table, knew what to do in that unbalance. Nothing. She waited. Very well. 9 Pack Lords signed the binding treaty. 9 Pack Lords will uphold it. The Alpha King has been unwell. The council has entrusted regency to my daughter, pending his recovery. Tonight's unrest was the work of a faction loyal to a mistress the king kept in secret. That mistress will stand trial in the morning for the murder of 4 Morofang guards. She will be executed at noon. Ronan did not move. Sable had asked him not to, and she would love him for that small act of trust for the rest of her life. You have rehearsed that well. There is only one piece of it you have got wrong. The piece where I am a mistress. She loosened the tie at her throat and let the heavy wool slide down her shoulders to the flagstones, and she stood there in her torn gray mill dress, the silver spiral and its 2 fine roots shining out of her chest as bright and cold and clean as a sigil cut into a pane of winter glass. The hall made a single sound. It was the sound 30 people make when they have all forgotten, at once, to finish the breath they were taking. Lenya's bound hands rose to her own mouth. A claiming mark on the hip or the neck was a thing the North knew. A claiming mark above the heart, set there by a dying wolf's own spirit reaching past its failing body to anchor itself in the hand keeping it alive, was a thing the North had not seen in 4 generations. There was a name for it. It was heart-kept. A woman a wolf's own soul had chosen without the wolf's knowing, a woman no binding cup, no council writ, no regency paper could overwrite. No, that is not. It is. You have known it was since Copperbottom, which is why your broadsheet said dead or living. Your daughter has been a placeholder for 1 hour of one night, and the hour has ended. Halric's face moved the way a man's face moves when the plan he has kept polished inside him has been taken out of his hand and broken. "Kill her," he said. Isolde Dravanye had lived for this order her entire life. She came off the dais at Sable in 3 steps with the blade low along her thigh. Ronan moved, but Sable moved first. Not away. Toward. She had never fought in her life, but the thing inside her ribs that had been rising to its full height for 2 days, the thing the Hollowbrook pack had called her hollow for lacking, had been waiting. She let it up. The shift did not tear her. It was not a shift into a wolf at all. What came out of her was not an animal, and was not a woman, and was both. Silver. A great soft blaze bloomed out of the spiral on her chest, ran down her arms, ran up her throat, and when Isolde's knife came at her belly, it met a sheet of living silver light curved along her body like the inside of a shell. The knife shattered. The shards rang on the flagstones like small bells. Isolde stood with the empty hilt in her fist and stared at Sable's belly in pure, uncomprehending terror. "What are you?" "I do not know yet, but I think my grandmother did." Ronan came past her right shoulder, took Isolde's wrist, and handed her to Asher Vale. Halric on the dais drew his own long, thin blade. Then it will have to be me. He came down off the dais at Sable. He was 70 years old and he moved like a man of 40. He was aiming below the silver. He was aiming at her belly. Ronan hit him. From the side, at full wolf height, the iron dark pelt in one blur of motion, the shift happening between one stride and the next. The blade went wide. Halric went sideways into the stone foot of the dais. The old lord got up. He should not have. But he got up and reached into the breast of his coat. And what he came out with was not a second blade. It was a small glass vial. Black liquid. Sable's healer eye knew the color before her mind named it. Wolfsbane, reduced past the point any pack law allowed. He was not going to drink it. He was going to throw it. At Ronan's open, shifted mouth. No, Sable said. She stepped between them. The silver on her skin bloomed again, blinding, and as the vial left Halric's fingers in its short black arc toward Ronan's jaws, Sable put her silver-bright palm up, open, and caught it. The vial broke against her skin. The wolfsbane ran across her palm and over the silver and fell, harmless, smoking, to the flagstones like rain sliding off glass. That is not possible. You are not. I am. My grandmother knew. You knew too. That is why you wanted me dead before I knew. Halric lunged for the blade. He did not reach it. Ronan, still in his wolf shape, did not tear his throat. He had promised her, on the ridge, that the old lord was his, and he kept his promises by the letter. He set one great paw on Halric's chest and held him pinned. Sable walked to them, knelt beside Halric, and put her silver palm on his forehead. She did not kill him. She was a healer. What she did instead was put him to sleep. The long, deep healer's sleep her grandmother had used on men who had been hurt past bearing. His pale eyes rolled up. His body went slack. The silver drained slowly out of her skin. Her knees almost did not hold. Ronan, who had shifted back in the same breath his paw had come off Halric's chest, caught her under the arms. Asher Vale said quietly, "The walls are ours, my king." Ronan was looking down at Sable. "Heart kept," he said, trying the word on his tongue. "Apparently." Something in his face eased into the first true, unguarded smile she had seen on him in 5 months. "Sable of Hollow Brook, will you let me keep you for the rest of my life?" "I was going to ask you that." He laughed. A small, ragged, real laugh, pressed his forehead to hers. And from the far wall, the hostages, who had been untied while Halric was still speaking, began one by one to kneel. The binding the old lord had stolen from Ronan Cale was undone in the great hall of Orvin Keep on the same night it had been stolen, and it was undone in the old way, which does not need a council. It only needs 2. Isolde Dravania was already gone. Halric Dravania was already in the cells. The hostages had been lifted to their feet, and Lenya had come straight across the flagstones and put her arms around her brother for the length of a single long, unsteady breath before stepping back, taking Sable's silver-streaked hand in both of hers and pressing it to her own forehead in the oldest courtesy a Morofang woman could offer, a heart kept. The kitchen girls came next, and the high cantor with his staff of carved yew, and one by one they knelt, not to the king, to the small woman whose palm had caught wolfsbane without burning. Ronan stood behind her with his hand on the small of her back. When the last of the household had knelt and risen, he turned her to face him in the torchlight, and he said, not loudly but so that every ear in the hall could hear, "I was bound once tonight without my consent. I stand before this hall now, and I say, the binding is broken, by the mark on my heart-kept's chest, and by her hand that caught my death out of the air. I ask her, in your hearing, to take the second binding in its place. I ask her to take it freely." He went down on one knee and drew from the inside of his coat a plain silver band, soft with wear. His mother's. He had been carrying it for 5 months, for a name he could not remember. Sable, will you take it? I will. He slid it onto her finger. It settled. In the old way, there is no canter for the second binding. There is no staff of yew. There is only the two of them, and the claim the wolf makes with teeth. Ronan rose. He loosened his collar, tilted his head back, offered the long tendoned line of his throat to her in the old sign of submission to a heart kept, and said, very quietly, "Finish it." She did not know how. It turned out she did not need to be taught. The thing inside her ribs, which had spent 23 years being told it was hollow, rose very gently up under her breastbone and guided her. She stood on her toes, pressed her mouth to the hollow at the base of his throat where the pulse was loudest, and set the ceremonial mark there with the softest touch of her teeth against his warm skin. The silver went out of her in a single bright flood, into him. He made a sound, not of pain, of arrival. His arms came around her and held her like a man catching a thing he had been told all his life he was not allowed to have. The spiral on her chest steadied, and the two fine roots folded in on themselves and settled into the clean, clear shape of a completed sigil. The broken hairline under her sternum closed. She felt it stop being a wound and become a scar. And in the circle of his arms, she felt for the first time the full, clean, ringing note of what the Old North called a mated pair. She could feel, through the braid, the shape of his days in the tower, the taste of the dream he had been having the night she had ridden the mill horse through the thaw. She could feel him feeling her in return. Lower, below the spiral, the two small heartbeats went on beating. She felt him feel those too. The enormous quiet of a man who had spent his whole life alone inside his own skin, finding out he was not alone in it anymore. Heart kept, he said, against her hair. Heart keeper, she said, because the word was there in the braid, and she did not question it. He laughed, wet and ragged. The hall did not cheer. The Old North does not cheer a second binding. Every wolf in the hall, one by one, lifted a throat and let out a single soft-held note, and the notes braided together into a low, wordless chord that rose up the stone ribs of the hall and out into the night above. In the villages around the Greywater country, wolves that had not shifted for weeks lifted their heads and joined. The weather broke that night, the true break of spring. In the weeks that followed, Halric Dravanya answered in formal council for many years of poisonings and for the murder of 4 Morofang guards. He was stripped of his name, which in the Old North is the worst of the sentences, and sent into the wolfless country above the tree line. Isolde was not sentenced to death. Sable asked very quietly that she not be. She was sent south under a different name. She had never truly wanted the throne. She had only wanted her father to look at her the way he looked at the map. The Hollowbrook pack received in the spring a written order from the Alpha King. It did not punish them. It simply notified them that any child born on their land who did not shift by a certain age was to be brought, at pack expense, to Orvin Keep for examination by the Heartkep's own hand. The elders sent back an apology in the old hand. Sable read it once and set it aside. The children came at the end of summer. Asher Vale stood outside the door for 11 hours. He did not sit down. When the first cry came, the thin, furious cry of a newborn who has just discovered air and has opinions about it, he put his forehead against the doorframe and breathed out once, the way a man breathes out when a thing he has been carrying since a winter night in a hunting lodge is finally set down. A boy and a girl. The boy had his father's dark hair. The girl had her mother's mouth and her father's pale, bruised gold eyes, and at 3 days old, lying in her father's enormous, careful hand, she opened those eyes and looked at the silver claiming mark at the base of his throat and made a small, surprised, pleased sound, And Ronan Kale put his face into her tiny shoulder and cried without shame because he had spent 5 months calling a name he could not remember, and now he was holding the second person in his life who had been named Sable. They called her that. Sable, the younger. On the first true cold night of the next winter, Sable and Ronan stood at the high window of the North Tower, the tower he had paced in for 3 months, calling a name into the empty dark. The window was no longer empty. Below them, the lamps of Orvin Keep were lit, and beyond them, the torches of the Greywater villages, and further out, even the villages that had once been allied with House Dravani had lit their winter lamps. In the cradle behind them, the two children slept in one tangle because they refused to be separated at night. Say it again. Which one? The last one, from the slope. He bent his head and put his mouth at her temple. I am not losing you again. She closed her eyes. I believe you. I did not know, for a long time, that I was allowed to. I believe you now. He kissed her temple. Outside, far below in the bailey, one of the outriders on the night watch lifted his throat to the stars and began softly, an old song that had not been sung inside Orvin Keep in 4 generations. And one by one, in the villages across the Greywater, other throats joined it, and the song ran on outward across the cold winter dark until even the wolves on the border stones picked it up and carried it on. It had been written, according to the High Cantor, for the first heart-kept of the North, and it had only 4 lines. Sable did not know the words. She did not need to. Her body knew them. The thing inside her ribs, which was not hollow, which had never been hollow, which had only been waiting for a hand to reach through the dark of a dying man's chest and anchor it, hummed the 4 lines against her breastbone as the song went on. I was lost. I am found. I was hollow. I am home. Ronan held her. She let him. Below them, the keep kept its lamps,